Millions are on the verge of starvation in war-torn Yemen. Aid agencies say they can no longer ensure delivering food to those in need because of increasing threats against them. I'm Maria Ramos, and today's newsmaker is the humanitarian aid blockade in Yemen. There have been allegations of aid diversion and obstruction in Yemen since its civil war began. In 2018, the Saudi-led coalition established a blockade that led to widespread famine. Last year, the World Food Programme temporarily suspended aid deliveries in the north, accusing Iran-backed Houthi rebels of obstructing its distribution. Now, millions of Yemenis are again facing the risk of famine. The United Nations is considering suspending its operations in Houthi-controlled areas where threats against its humanitarian workers have increased, and has accused the Houthis of using aid as a weapon of war. The Houthis deny that they're impeding humanitarian efforts and have even backtracked on a previous threat to tax international aid. So, which side is right? We'll debate that in a moment. But first, Francis Collins has this report.
The United Nations calls it the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. The civil war in Yemen has devastated a country, displaced 3.5 million people and killed tens of thousands. With millions on the verge of starvation, it's also created the world's biggest aid operation, one that is now under threat. The World Food Programme claims that aid is being weaponized. But 15.9 million people in Yemen go to bed hungry every day. 14 million need immediate help to sustain or save lives, and famine is a strong possibility. 80% of the people receiving food aid are in the Houthi rebel-controlled areas of the country. Officials there had considered imposing a 2% tax on humanitarian assistance. They've since backed away from that idea, but nonetheless, agencies have faced some serious problems in the last year. Lack of travel permits, intimidation of aid workers, and other restrictions have slowed the delivery of food aid to where it's needed. And there's now concern that aid deliveries could be scaled down.
The interference now of authorities is so severe on so many fronts. It's so difficult to work that I have never been as worried for this lifeline for people in need in Yemen as I am today.
The agencies have also faced problems in areas controlled by the Saudi-backed Yemeni government, but according to the United Nations, these have been less dramatic. Aid groups, donor nations, and the UN met in Brussels last week. They say they've jointly decided to recalibrate or even suspend aid if the situation doesn't improve. The complication is that any concerted action could affect the efforts to bring to an end Yemen's ongoing war, and any suspension of aid could prove devastating for the people in need. Francis Collins, The Newsmakers.
Joining me now from Istanbul is Najeeb Ghanem. He's Yemen's former health minister and also a member of the Al-Islah party, a Yemeni political party that supports the Saudi-led coalition. In Yemen's capital, Sana'a, we have pro-Houthi journalist Hussain Albukhaiti. And joining us from Washington is Dave Harden. He's the managing director of the Georgetown Strategy Group, who has led USAID efforts in Yemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the Newsmakers. First, let's go to Yemen, to Sana'a. And I want to ask you, Hussain, the Houthis were threatening to put a 2% tax on humanitarian aid, but they backtracked. Why?
They have backed from that because there was some resistance here in Sana'a for that 2%. But I want to say that the reason what actually was for putting that 2% because they have formed here in Sana'a the so-called high council to coordinate humanitarian aid, to facilitate the UN agency here, and to make the work for them easier. So instead of the United Nations agency, instead of going to all government department in Sana'a, and this will cost them as well a lot, they have just want to go to one place, and that place will facilitate all, or make it better to get all the permission and all to avoid any restriction for their movement. But I do agree that there is so much restriction here in Sana'a for some the movement for, or the free movement for the United Nations agency, and as well another NGOs.
Hussain,
but the reason behind that is because we are in a time of war.
Hussain, just to clarify something, why would they tax in the first place? Why would they offer, suggest taxing 2% in the first place? You mentioned that they've created an organization, but is this the only reason?
Yeah, the reason is not, as you say, taxes. It's true, 2%, but this is because to run that new formed bureau, or that organization in Sana'a, the United Nations and its NGOs, by directing going to this bureau, it will save a lot of money and time. But anyway, at the end, this was taken down and it was not implemented. But let me make it clear that I think that now the United Nations, when sometimes they have to mention that maybe the Houthis are using humanitarian aid as a weapon, I think the main party who is using the humanitarian aid as a weapon is Saudi Arabia, because Houthis were in power for 6 months here in Sana'a and many greater area in Yemen before the war, and we haven't had any of this
Hussain,
crisis,
let's talk
only
about
because
that
of the Saudi
later.
blockade, the main reason.
Okay, Hussain, let's talk about who's using aid as a weapon, because there's accusations that both sides are. We'll come to that later. I want to go here in Istanbul to Najeeb. Why would they tax aid? What is there to be gained by aid being taxed? This is medicine, this is food for 80% of the country. Hussain has said it's because they need it to run their new bureau. Najeeb? Najeeb in Istanbul.
No, really, to be honest, this is false agreement. I mean, this is, yeah, really, really, this is what he's, unfortunately, what he said is really false argument. I mean, this is Ahmad main crisis in Yemen, in Sana'a and surrounding areas, under the control of Houthi rebels. I mean, Houthi before even they just they put their hands on also public money, private sectors. They've stolen so many things. I mean, you know, government incomes and all these things, and stop even salaries for the people. So all these crises, all this poverty, this is mainly created by Houthi rebels. And it's for ages, really. They used to, you know, capture all these international aids and resell it in the black market. So, I mean, what he said really, unfortunately, is I can say lying, unfortunately. And really, the scenario is very bitter. We are very sorry to see this scenario, and also the escalation of this deterioration of the people. I mean, increasing their agony, their poverty, their suffering. But most of this scenario is really made by Houthis. Okay. Yeah, I can admit there is also other factors created by others. I can't. I mean, you know.
And Najeeb, let me just jump in.
But really, the main cause is the Houthi rebels.
Okay.
They used to steal money.
Okay, and
yes,
and you believe that it is only the Houthi rebels that are to blame for blocking aid?
They just declared, I mean, the minister, what they call it, Minister of Education, Yahya Al-Houthi, he just admitted that, yes, he you know, nationalized or captured, I mean, more than 150 tons of international aids. And he just admitted that, I mean, and he blamed also other Houthi figures like Ahmed Hamid and Abdul Muhsin al-Ta'us and all these. They said they blamed them. They are other main senior Houthi figures. So they start to blame each other. I mean, that they just, yes, they admitted that they captured them in these international aids. But this is really a chronic problem made by Houthis for ages. And international aid agencies, they just kept silent. Now they just discovered that Houthis are, you know, taking these international aids and just, I mean, putting their hands on it. Also, when they just received all this before, when they just go and distribute it among these constituency, for example, in Sana'a and elsewhere, they used to bring all these in a biased way for their followers. And those poor families, who are in desperate need of these foods, they just insist them and press them that they have to send their children to the battlefield, to the war. Unless they will just, stop to bring them, this. So it's even
Najeeb, let's let Hussain answer.
Way of distributing, food and international aids.
Najeeb, Hussain, sorry, if you could answer some of the claims there that Najeeb has made.
You have asked him directly, is it the Houthi only to blame? And his answer was only blaming Ansarullah, the Houthi. Of course, there could be some local contractor on the ground who are recruited by the United Nations and who were, some of them were corrupt. But the whole blame is for the United Nations because it's the one who are receiving the money. It should be the one who knows where to deliver it. And I just want to mention about, of course, I don't agree as well about that 2% that was announced here in Sana'a. But anyway, they have cancelled it. But I will just mention that the United Nations crying out loud about this 2%. On the other hand, we remember that World Health Organization head, Dr. Zakaria, who was in Sana'a for 21 months, he resigned because he is under investigation of corruption. He had brought 2 people from Philippines to take care of his dog and getting between $10,000 and $15,000 a month. That's why we have a saying in Yemen: if your house made from glass, you shouldn't throw rocks against other. United Nations
Hussain,
is totally
I want
corrupt.
to bring in Dave from Washington. Dave, you've heard there many points of view, very different. Tell us something there that Najeeb said, that you were silent, well, not you, but so many international aid agencies were silent with regards to what's going on in Yemen. That's one point. But tell us also, what exactly is in these shipments? What is being blocked for the 80% of the people?
So let me just step back for a second. The World Food Program and the United Nations, they know what to do. They know how to deliver food to people that need it. And in the Houthi-controlled territories, much of the problem relates to the Houthis manipulating the use of the aid or diverting it completely. And so there's been massive fraud, waste, and abuse. There's just no doubt about that. It's easily rectified. You can just open up the territory or the Houthi-controlled areas so that the World Food Program and its implementing partners can operate freely. You can set up a biometrics system so that the people who need it get it. We've done that in Syria and in Jordan. And so there really are fairly simple answers to this. There's still lots of bad actions on everybody's side, and we can talk about what needs to be done in other areas besides Houthi-controlled territories. But the Houthis could end the humanitarian crisis in their controlled areas tomorrow.
They could end it tomorrow. And just clarify for our audience and people who aren't so familiar with the humanitarian aid, what exactly are we talking about? What is inside these shipments?
So typically you would have either food stocks or food baskets or even vouchers that would allow people to buy certain food items on the local market. Generally the vouchers are a little bit more efficient, but we do it all in Yemen and it's all necessary. And there's a distribution and logistical chain that's attached to that, and it does require contractors and truckers and NGOs to distribute it to the people that need it. But the World Food Program and the United Nations have done this for decades all over the world. They know how to do it. The logistics aren't an issue.
Okay. And
just
so
delivering the food to the people that need it.
And Dave, so when the new Houthi aid body accuses international NGOs of trying to distribute expired or otherwise unsafe food and medication, what do you make of such a comment?
I think we would have to look at the facts pretty carefully. The World Food Program and the World Health Organization are pretty rigorous. There are times when things go wrong. There's also an Inspector General program, and for those donations that might be expired, there's a mechanism in place. But let's just be clear, that's not the problem. right? The problem isn't that bad food is going to Yemen. The problem is that food isn't getting to the people that need it. So it seems like a red herring argument to me.
And Najeeb, you were health minister. Why have things deteriorated so much? And why, from the outside, we see Yemen and it just looks like they are starving their own people? Why? What is to be gained?
Yeah, to be honest, really, you just look for the Houthi phenomena. I mean, in Yemen, who was the new player who just created all these headaches in Yemen. If the U.S., I mean, and international agencies, I mean, who are providing these international aid, if they can guarantee that they can go in contact directly with the people without barriers by Houthis. The problem is when they just deliver all these, international aids, they used to bring it to Houthis. And Houthis created their own agents, and they start to blame all these things, as I said before. Part of it, I just resell it back again to the black market. They used to make it biased. They used just to distribute against their followers, and they ignore the majority of the people. So if the international aids can make a real, way of delivering these international aids to the people who are desperate of it directly without any barriers or any agents by Houthis. Even Houthis has succeeded, I mean, to create so many local steps which are loyal to Houthis and just under the control and commands of Houthis. And this is the problem. And we come up with all these bad and very bitter scenarios. To be honest, as Yemenis, we are very, feeling very sad about this, about the war, about the killing people. Even the people who are being killed, even from the Houthi sides, most of them are children, innocent people. They are nothing to do with war, and they haven't got any benefits of it. The benefit is just those who are controlling, Sana'a by force, and they insisted to continue controlling it by force. And no matter who's going to pay all these heavy prices, I mean, poverty, hunger, and also killing of the innocent people. So this is a very complex scenarios, most of it made by Houthis. If the international aids, international guarantees, U.S., the Security Council can make new tools to guarantee providing all these international aids directly to the people, and I think they are able to do it. But to be honest, they are reluctant. They are just watching, delivering all these things and keeping silent. And now they discovered that there is a problem, and this problem, they have responsibility of what we have reached so
Dave,
far. I mean, I blame also international aids, U.S. agencies, and all these things. I mean, yeah.
Okay, Dave, you've heard strong words there from Najeeb with regards to international aid. They've been silent. They're reluctant. What do you make of his comments? Would you agree?
I think the UN and the international NGOs have been pretty vocal about both the challenges in Yemen and the risk of diversion and the bad acts by all parties, right? For sure in Houthi-controlled territories, they're responsible, but a lot could be done by all the actors to achieve a better outcome with this humanitarian crisis. But let me make one quick point. The answer, aside from peace, the answer is not international aid. The answer is having an economy in Yemen that works so that people have the purchasing power to buy food and other basic commodities. And the economic order is absolutely broken in Yemen, and until that gets fixed, there simply isn't enough money and enough aid to drive solutions. It will have to be the private sector and the market in a functional economy.
Would you agree with that, Najeeb?
To some extent, yes, but broken of economy is caused by Houthis again, because they just put their hands on the public money. They stop providing salaries for the people, but in the same time, they just, collecting the budget, public budget of the government incomes. So in one part, they just depleted all public incomes, and now in these days, they just put their hands on the private money as well. They just nationalized, hospitals, universities, schools, and so on. So and so companies as well. So this is they just created a lot of problems. Yes, I admit that the economy, one of their victims, and this is the outcomes of the broken of the economy made mainly by Houthis. And so, I mean, yes.
I hope if you can let me
collateral
as well
efforts,
comment.
international aids, international agencies, UN, they can all working together to, you know, at least, I mean, attenuate, at least, I mean, eradicate all these bad scenarios. I mean, we can just come up with it by Houthis.
Hussain, what is the solution to getting aid to the people in Yemen where you are?
I've seen from David Harden answer when he said the answer is not humanitarian aid, it's the answer of an, as he said, to Yemen to have an economy. I mean, it's really strange for him, as he worked before in USAID, that he has not mentioned like the war and the blockade and the total destruction of Yemen infrastructure, fishing industry, farming industry, north of Yemen. I mean, Titan blockade. I mean, this is. I mean, it looks like that this have nothing to do what's happening in Yemen. If the Saudi war stopped, if the blockade will be lifted, if United States will stop sending all this bomb to Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen infrastructure, Yemen we didn't have, or we didn't need aid before the war. We didn't have cholera or all those type of illness in Yemen. The main who should be held accountable is the is the UN Security Council for not stopping this war against Yemen.
Let's let Dave answer that.
One final comment. Just one more thing, please, if you let me. When Mr. David Harden said that the NGOs, United Nations, knows what to do, why is the former head of World Health Organization in Yemen is under investigation from corruption? USAID has, there was $30 million from USAID for helping children in Yemen. I've seen document only 3.6 million has actually reached the Yemeni children. I mean, what about that? Is this corruption bigger than the 2%?
Let's
who are
let
they
Dave
now
answer
crying
that.
out loud, which the Houthi try to impose?
Dave.
These are marginal issues to the overall problem. So, of course, the war is the fundamental driver of the humanitarian crisis.
Thank you.
The economy is also an accelerant to the humanitarian crisis, and I think we cannot distinguish that. So, of course, more basic commodities need to come into the country from every port whatsoever. And it needs to be done in a way that is expedited and without corruption or high overhead and administrative costs. And there needs to be an opening more broadly. The last point I would just make is that the currency collapse itself, which is a result of the splintering of the Central Bank of Yemen, is a massive driver of a lack of purchasing power and is really accelerating the humanitarian crisis. But the biggest point overall, and I think as this segment demonstrates, is that we hear lots of argument and lots of noise and no solutions. And at the end of the day, it's the millions and millions of Yemeni people that are suffering.
All right, let's talk solutions. Najeeb, this war has been grinding on for 4 years now. When does it end? What are the solutions?
I hope really from my heart that we end today, if not tomorrow. I mean, yes, there is also, you know, some players we can admit that they interested for inauguration of this war, and you know now children are killing now. Most of them, coming from you know innocent people and not necessarily, I mean, derived by themselves. I mean, for example, families are interested to watch them, but in these days, there are 30,000 children are under control of Houthis and pushing them to the battlefield. So, I mean, as Yemenis, I mean, we are very sorry to see those people have been killed in both sides, because in both sides they are still Yemenis, and people are suffering. They're suffering, you know, from I mean, you know, poverty and all these things are increasing. So, I mean, international community can help in this respect.
Okay.
If we can, I mean, pushing for releasing all willingness, political willingness for all players to end this war.
Okay.
But the main cause, as I say, is the coup, the Houthis, who are insisted till now to control Yemen by force. This is the main cause.
Hussain, how does this
Plus
end?
other factors.
Okay, we've got a few minutes to go. Hussain, how does this end?
I think the first thing to to end this war, Ansarullah the Houthi should talk directly with Saudi, and everyone should put his grievance and on the table. And if they don't do that, I believe that Saudi and United Arab Emirates will stay in the back, and they could do whatever they want. And we see what they do in south of Yemen, because the United Nations, as I want to say, that they have not mentioned Saudi and United Arab Emirates in any statement as a factor of this war. So everyone who is in this war should be sit down at the table, everybody, Saudi Arabia and everyone,
Dave,
and then we should talk directly
20 seconds.
to each other to solve this.
How does this end? Very briefly, 20 seconds.
The situation first can get worse because you have coronavirus coming, and that could devastate a weakened population. So it's imperative that the parties realize that they're fighting over something that may not exist in a year. So I think it's necessary to have these kind of reconciliation conversations that both parties have outlined. But in addition, it's important to get the economy moving now.
All right, Dave, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on The Newsmakers. And to our audience, it's been a fascinating debate. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye.